Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy July 15th. This is WSSDA's Legislative Representative Network meeting. I'm really excited y'all are here today to join us. And thanks in advance, Levon, for running the slides. We obviously know many of you, but in case you are new in the meeting or new in watching this recording, we just wanted to take a second to introduce ourselves as the advocacy team. My name is Logan Noel Endres. I am the Director of Strategic Advocacy. Been on board for about 2.5, actually exactly 2.5 months. Today, I'm excited to be with you.
Hey everyone, Levon Williams here. I'm the Advocacy and Policy Analyst. I think I just hit my 6-month anniversary, so I'm really excited about that. Welcome. Happy for you to join us today.
Great. Thanks, Levon. Just wanted to start with a quick introduction of how we're going to spend our time over the next hour. We're going to get grounded in some of our equity positions, do a quick year-round advocacy check-in, and really spend the majority of our time today focused on some follow-up learning, unpacking our legislative impact toolkit that we started on last month. We got some more content for you this month. Hope you're excited about that. And we'll wrap up with a couple reminders about General Assembly and call it a day.
Alrighty. Thank you so much. Today, so you see here WASA equity statement. Before we kind of dive into today's agenda, or we went over the agenda, I wanted to take a moment to ground our work in something that's at the heart of WASDA mission, which is equity. As a legislative representative, I think you carry the voices of your communities into like statewide conversations. And that's really rooted in equity work to provide high quality education, regardless of their race, background, or zip code. Here at WASDA, we're really committed to increasing equity and access for all students in Washington State. The commitment really shows up in our policy priorities, our trainings, and the tools we offer to school board members, and for them to lead locally. It could show up whether you're leading or examining a district's discipline data, advocating for more inclusive funding policies, or even reviewing board policy equity. Really should be grounded in those lenses. So take a look at the equity statement. It's plainly a document that plays a role in the way of advocating for policies that really break down those barriers and not really reinforce them. It also means that you could help fellow board members and communities see equity as an essential and not as something that's optional. So wanted to ground you in this before we get into the work today. And I think this is a practice we'll bring up for the remainder of the Legislative Representative Network meeting. So I'm excited to kind of to dig into this. Um, Here's a WASDA infographic, which really highlights equity. As we continue to advocate for stronger and more equitable educational systems, it's really crucial that it's something that we talk about. Sometimes it could be overlooked, but the when we're looking at equity work is deeply impacted, and we need representation. So there's some really important numbers in this chart. If you're looking at this research, it tells you that same race matters for teachers, students of color, right? Having a teacher who shares that similar racial identity could have a significant, improvement to their long-term outcomes and success. This is really true for Black and Brown students, I would say. There are definitely some measurable gains to that reading and math and graduation rates, college enrollment, all just from that teacher connection and racialization. So it's also is not really just about the teachers. I would say diversifying staff and school boards really have a ripple effect. So when there's diversity in leadership, schools are more likely to adopt those inclusive policies or practices to to that, to show fewer disparities in areas like discipline. Um, I would say it really changes the climate for students and staff. Um, so leaders of colors, principals, superintendents, administrators, they really bring those lived experiences that helps dismantle barriers. So they help implement culturally relevant curriculum. They lead equity focused initiatives, and they serve as powerful mentors, not just for students of color, but for the entire school community. So um, just wanted to ground you in some of the numbers here and look at the racialization when we're looking at K through 12 education in Washington State. All right, Logan, you're up.
Great, thanks for that, Levon. And also just want to share for anyone who might be interested in seeing that document that Levon was referencing in case it's your first time. I did throw a link to that in the chat. Also saw a question about sharing the PowerPoint slides with you. That should be uploading any second now for you to have. Okay, in another continuing resource for you, I'm always going to give you a year-round advocacy check-in and just remind you of our infographic here. And just say that while it is the middle of summer and legislative session might feel far away, we're all focused on the sunshine right now. This is your reminder that there is still advocacy work to be done. And what we specifically wanted to remind you of today, and we're going to dive into a lot of how you can do this during our toolkit part of our time, is just a reminder to stay connected and maintain relationships with your legislators. Um, School is not in session right now, but this is still a great time for you to maybe ask your legislators or their staff to go to coffee, or invite them to a school board meeting that you're having, basically just to keep those connections alive. That's your reminder of something you can do right now. So without further ado, we are going to dive into our legislative impact toolkit, shifting topics. If you pop one more forward, Levon, we just want to ground you in what happened last month. For those of you that may not have been here, we really spent some time focused on generally the role of lead reps and what interim advocacy can look like for you. We were in small groups, and there was some really lively discussion about ways that lead reps can network and engage with their community, with their fellow school board members, with students, and with legislators. And if you flip one more slide forward, Levon, today we're going to dive a little bit deeper and focus on strategies that can help you turn some of those advocacy ideas into action.
Thank you. So, building on the first meeting that took place, we're really trying to leverage, how to be a ledge rep network, how to serve as a ledge rep. I think I talked on this point at the previous meeting, is understanding the legislative process is somewhat intimidating and confusing to many. I would say as a ledge rep, you are the bridge between your district and the state capital. You should have a deep knowledge or some basic level understanding of how bills move through the process from when they're pre-filed to when they change and shift in committees, understanding how certain committees work, and really knowing when to take that advocacy stance and moving policies forward. So I would say really use this handbook and this toolkit to stay informed. And thinking about the second bullet, building relationships with legislators, I don't, I talked about not needing to be a lobbyist. That's, you just need to be the connector, essentially. Reach out to them early on, try to have coffee with them. I would say invite them to your schools, attend board meetings if possible. They are out in the community with their constituents. Try to, if you can get a chance with them, try to share some personal stories to really shape um, uh, policy priorities, right? And continuing to engage with your community. Try to incorporate some parents' voices into that your advocacy work. You know, the more voices that they hear, legislators really understand what's at stake and the impacts of the legislation that they propose. Um, Another way to stay engaged and as you're building relationships is, you know, creating a advocacy day or organizing a day on the Capitol. I think that's a an important way to remain engaged, and also you can host either like a local advocacy event within your district and then invite a legislator. Try to use your voice once again to activate and elevate community voices. And lastly, when I'm thinking about effective communication, try to shift or generate a clear, concise message that's really compelling. Try to stick to one or two things or ask, right, and make sure it's backed by somewhat of a local, I don't know, local stories and data that could share that could lend light to that story. I would say you can either follow up via email or even a quick call with the legislators. I'd say relationships take some time, but continue to be consistent with your communication. I'm sure they would appreciate that. Once again, legislators, they are normal people. Please feel the need to communicate with them, whether you're calling their legislative assistant or you're emailing them. You'll see that in the next few slides coming up. But the gist of this is really building that communication, that community engagement during the legislative process, and try not to see it as somewhat intimidating, but also a chance for you to elevate your community stories. So I'll pass it to you, Logan.
Thanks, Levon. If you flip back one slide, I'm just in the spirit of leveraging the LegRep network. I just want to highlight Director Darcy Huffman from Olympia noted in the chat that they actually had one of their representatives volunteer weekly in one of their elementary schools. And Darcy, you can say no, but I'd love it if you might consider coming off mute and just sharing a little bit about what that process was like for you, how you were able to develop and sort of grow that relationship. That's really cool. And leveraging the network, share your experience with your fellow ledge reps on the call.
Yeah, our one of our representatives, Beth Dolio, her dad was a superintendent, and so she really has a heart for education. And while the environment is really her jam. That's where she's really strong. But she knew that we were struggling as a school district, and so she wanted to see what was going on in our schools, and so she started volunteering at one of our elementary schools, fourth grade, and she volunteered from September until the session started, and really learned a lot. And I think that, and she could really, I think it really helped her when it came to having conversations about education. I would just encourage somebody to, even if it's just to come for a month, right before session. So I mean, we're really lucky in the 22nd. Well, I live in the 35th, but in the 22nd district where most of our schools are, we're really lucky to have legislators who are really interested in education and who meet with us monthly, and who are really engaged. So, and it's all just about creating that relationship and making those relationships and ask, right? Because the worst thing they can do is say no.
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Darcy, and really living into the spirit of the LegRep network. We really want this to also be a space where if you have an experience that you'd like to offer or a way that you've implemented one of our tools in a way that's been really helpful for you, please jump in and share it. Because as much as we can be sharing resources and activities with you all, this is really about building connections between those of you that all carry the work of LegRep. So thank you for leaning in. All right, so we're going to move into just a short section really quick here about communication templates. If you're in the toolkit right now, you can check out pages 48 to 51. We're just going to throw a couple of them on the screen here and not talk through them specifically. But one of the things that, as we keep talking about connecting with legislators, we want to make sure that you have is the tools and supports so that you can have a basis for what you might want to say to your legislators. We acknowledge that having the idea can sometimes be different than actually executing and making those connections with your staff or with your legislators. So, included in the handbook, we have some sample letters and memos and templates that you can feel free to use to include things like introducing yourself and requesting a meeting with your legislator, following up on that meeting request because we know our legislators are very busy and sometimes follow up can be needed. Sharing general legislative updates with them, maybe advocating for a specific topic, inviting them to come out and visit your schools. You'll need to go in and personalize all of these samples, but just wanted to let you know that those do exist in case a resource like that is helpful for you. Additionally, not on the screen, but included in that section of the handbook, we also have some sample scripts that you may want to use in picking up the phone and calling your legislator or their staff, leaving them a voicemail. Basically, again, just acknowledging that we want to give you all the resources that you need to successfully build and maintain your relationships. And if that means a sample could be helpful, we hope you will check out our toolkit and know that we have those available to you. And then because I love a challenge, if any of you are sort of just hearing about this for the first time and really aren't sure where to start, I would challenge you if you've never sent an email or made a phone call to one or all of your district's legislators, pop into the toolkit, grab a sample message, and just send it off by the end of the day or the end of the week. These tools are here to help you. And as you're using them, if you have feedback for us, please don't hesitate to share it. But I wanted to highlight some of those.
Thanks, Logan. To shift gears a little bit, I want to talk about data and the influence of data through storytelling. As you're looking at the toolkit on page 23, I took a snapshot, a snapshot of some important information that I think would be extremely beneficial for you as we're thinking about like building relationships, taking your advocacy to influence. I think this is an effective part of the toolkit, and really why I would say sharing storytelling through data, I think it builds trust, right? I think when you're talking to a legislator or a community leader or a family member, the numbers really convey an important, a real impact of the policy decisions. I think it's one thing to claim a law can really hurt students. It's another way to show that a percentage of students really rely on, for example, free and reduced lunch, right? Those that data does a great job for folks applying to grants, community-based organization using that information. Whether you're looking at Title II cuts and how that could eliminate professional development for teachers throughout the district. I think that pairing data with stories really sheds light on the influence that you're trying to have with building those relationships with legislators. They have a direct number and they have a full view of the story which you're trying to tell. You could use comparative data to spotlight some of those inequities. Maybe your district receive less per pupil funding than neighboring districts, or serves twice the. I don't know. You could look at English language learners, right? Like looking at that contrast of how hard it can be. So when you present data, I would say simply try to simplify it. Stick to one or two key takeaways. Try to build a one pager or a simple chart to do a lot of storytelling to legislators. The time you get with legislators, try to be more concise and clear and simple. I think that helps for them as well. Um, Try to use current, locally relevant information uh, and try to stay away from outdated stats, right? Because that kind of, I guess, damper your credibility. look at WASDA legislative priorities, some of our funding summaries, or look at district snapshots, and try to like strengthen your message and aligning that with statewide trends. So remember, data is really not data is just a tool, is not a goal. So in advocacy work, the goal is to advocate for adequate funding in the state of Washington, and when we lead with facts and we have true meaning behind that, I would say that adds credibility and power to our advocacy voice. So try to use a lot of data when you're trying to influence legislators and tell a story is extremely important. Um, Qualitative, quantitative data, storytelling, student voices, parent feedback, whether you're surveying community members, surveying students. I really do think that is essential to your advocacy for your district. So I want to leave you with that. I think that's important. Thinking about part one and thinking about of the presentation, like how can we turn for today's session, how could we turn your voice into lead with service? So data is extremely important. I just wanted to reiterate that. And as I think as we move forward, I want to look at this legacy document. I can't even talk right now. I think it's important to think ahead, right? Like this document is not in the toolkit, but I think it should be, right? It could help you plan out for the next 30, 60, or 90 days. You could use it as a, summer, fall, winter document. Right now I'm thinking about legislators in the summertime, they're, in their home district. So I think this is a great time to build on or strengthen those relationships, reach out to them, invite them to, tour your schools, attend board meetings, coffee. That's my favorite thing to do, I would say, because you could build an authentic relationship with them. You could even looking at the fall, you could shift those your focus of your meetings to like pre-session planning before legislative session. I think that time is to clarify your district's priorities and align them with WASDA legislative priorities and platform. Then thinking about the winter time, when legislative session begins, I would say this is when your outreach turns into real time advocacy. It's an opportunity to weigh in on bills. You could share some local stories with legislators, looking at the data component, that's really important. Just communicating with legislators because things move relatively fast. And I would say this gives you the head start as you're thinking about your 30, 60, 90 days outlook moving forward. Looking at some of the focus areas, the first category, board or district legislative advocacy goals, I would say, ask yourself, what are your top legislative priorities for your district that year? Are you focused on issues like SPED funding, school safety, or even educational workforce challenges? These are some hypotheticals that I'm pulling out as you can use this document really to elevate your legislative action planning for you know months in advance. So I think it's a useful tool. I really wanted to bring this to your attention because it gives you a chance to plan out, to set a clear vision for the next 30, 60, 90 days and have a clear goal in mind. Things move fast, right? So here's a way to capture all of your high level action planning moving forward for your district.
Really great info, Levon. Before we move on to discussion in breakout rooms, I have to highlight what looks like a really great program from Director Lindsay Yoakum from Lake Washington School Board. She dropped a note in the chat about basically like an advocacy learning pilot program that she was able to initiate as lead rep in partnership with their district's PTSA. Lindsay, is there, I mean, you did give us a lot of details in the chat and a link, but That's so cool. Is there anything you want to say about that work?
Yes, I can try right as my child has come up here. Hold on, wait, please. Wait,
Sorry.
wait, please. That was great timing, and that's how it always happens. Yeah, I'm happy. Wait, please, Porter. Wait, I'm happy to go more in depth at another time. But it kind of I'm an educator, and so I kind of come from this point of I can do these things, but I would rather teach people how to do these things with me. I think when I have to prepare for a presentation, I actually then learn a whole lot more. And it's just this understanding of, as a school board, we can be a group interacting with our legislators, but there's so much power when we can encourage and motivate our community to better understand, to learn, and to advocate alongside us as well. So it was kind of formed with our district's PTSA advocacy chair, and we sat down and we kind of talked like how can we do this? How can we actually take like me as an elected leader who have these connections, and how can I help educate our community, and kind of like what you're doing right now, giving tools to us. How can I then kind of give those tools to the community? Because our representatives like to hear from us, but I think if they hear from hundreds and hundreds of more of their constituents with the same message, it becomes a little bit more powerful. It becomes a lot more powerful. So it was actually wonderful because then this information, one of our LDs, our 45th LD Democrats, reached out to me and said, "Hey, I hear you're doing this. Could you present to our organization?" So I kind of took some of these slides and presented on like what is school funding, and it's really amazing how like I've learned so much about it, but we're in this little world that nobody really understands. And when people start to understand, they start to see all these red flags. So I think it's just trying to create this to highlight like, what are the problems and how can people be a little bit more confident and kind of walk alongside us. So this is all new, but if there's anyone interested in wanting to like do this further or brainstorm, or I'm happy to, because I would love to see this continue and grow.
That's so great. And again, perfect timing. Thanks for taking a second to share a little bit more. I say all the time, just in advocacy broadly and generally, that I believe that we're stronger together. And I think this is a perfect example of a way to use some interim time to sort of build those connections and strengthen those relationships with community. One quote that you said, Lindsay, in the chat box that I think is beautiful is, "I believe that a better informed community will have the confidence and tools to advocate with us." And I really like advocate with us. So anyway, just had to highlight you. Thanks for that. So we're going to jump into breakout rooms right now for the next 15 minutes or so. We hope that the learning that Lavon was sort of just able to provide, along with the tools we gave you at the beginning of the meeting, were helpful in helping you think about getting connected to your legislators, leveraging this group. We've had a couple of really great examples today about some of the things we can all learn from each other, and also just navigating your LegRep role. But we're going to put you in breakout rooms for the next 15 minutes or so with some discussion around the questions on the screen. I will drop them in the chat box once you're in your rooms so that you can have them in there. But we're essentially hoping you'll spend the next 15 minutes discussing one or more of the questions on the screen, just thinking about what's been most helpful for you about today's session, how might you want to go deeper in the future, and essentially in the form of a couple of questions, how might you take some of the learnings today and either apply them, share them with your community, or execute them with your board. So those questions are in the chat. Breakout rooms are open, and we will see you back here at 12:45. Okay, welcome back, everyone. It is 12:45. We've got about 15 minutes left. Hoping we can spend maybe the next 5 or so minutes, if maybe one person from each group would like to share out on their conversation. I know the group I was in had some really cool ideas, but can I ask room one? Well, the room, I don't know which room is which. So the room that was
Right.
the room that was with me, will someone share out a little bit about maybe a highlight or two from your conversation?
Lindsay, you'd be good at that.
I already spoke, Jackie. No, I can. I'm now like trying to remember because I was also, my son was coming in and out. So I feel like it was brought up that a lot of the things that are presented, it's a lot that the three of us in that room, we kind of knew, right? And I'm curious if the other ones here as well. I mean, it's the mid-July in an afternoon and there's like 8 of us here. So I'm wondering if we are the ones who are dialed in a little bit, right, with knowledge here. So I think it was brought up by Logan actually mentioning, saying, hey, would it be helpful to have like a 101, like a legislative rep 101, and then like a 201 level, like kind of these different levels of understanding with what this role is and everything to do with it. And I really appreciated that because I think there's a need for kind of like a foundational level of understanding, but then I think how do you take it from there? And just kind of like in education, it's scaffolding, we're all at different levels. So how can you provide, what everybody needs? So I thought that was a wonderful idea. Now that was like, now my brain's, we talked about, what else did we talk about, Jackie? We talked about the end, at the end, I just remember it was how can some of us come together and I think we all, well, maybe we don't, but I forget your name, the other one, in Megan, sorry. Megan was saying how, they work with other different districts, come together and work with their legislators who represent multiple of the school districts. And I think that is something that, in talking to one of our senators, he said would be very helpful, that I don't know, I think it's like, is it 3 or 4, maybe 5 different school districts that he has jurisdiction over. So it is kind of, how can we all come together, make it a little bit easier and meet with him as a larger group than just have him go to all of these individual meetings. I feel like there was so much more we talked about. And Logan, oh, you came off mute.
No, I was just gonna say that's a perfect highlight. I took some notes from the conversation. I can include that in like the follow-up email or something. It's not full, but it's what I did. So no, it was great. How about the other room? Anything high level you want to share about your conversation?
I think one thing that we discussed was just how, one thing that was impactful to me that we discussed was how to just authentically connect with our legislators. I mean, it's one thing that they come to events, for photo op, which is totally fair, that makes sense, but just to, really, and even beyond like a school visit during the summer, maybe connect with them first through coffee or whatever, and then maybe broach the concept of coming and walking through one of the schools that the ceilings are crumbling. But yeah, just making those authentic connections.
Great. Thanks so much. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left. And just in our last couple of minutes, wanted to share a quick number of updates with you around General Assembly to support you in your engagement and your prep work. So the top level reminder, I'm going to keep doing this every month until we're together. We got 64 days until General Assembly on September 20th. That is happening again all virtually this year, and we hope to see every single school board in our state present. First and foremost, and I think just most importantly right now for you to know, is that the version 1 of the General Assembly Handbook has been released. It lives on the WSSDA website right now. Every school board member in the state should have gotten an email from us on July 1st when that link was posted. And version 1, essentially what that means for any of you that haven't done this before, this is what we call the pre-amendment General Assembly Handbook. So essentially this is every proposal that came in through the position window that many of you participated in earlier this spring. All of that content is in the handbook. And what's sort of coming up next, most importantly, is the amendment window. This is the virtual opportunity ahead of the General Assembly, where you have the chance to sort of look at what's included in the handbook, and if you choose to propose amendments to that process. After that window closes, we then, by a date that is on the slide, by August 18th, we'll release the final version of the handbook, which will essentially include everything that school board members will be debating and voting on later this fall. But most importantly, right now, I wanted you to know that handbook version 1 is posted. Would definitely encourage you to take a look at that handbook, share it with your board, maybe have some discussion with them around the contents that are included, and consider whether or not your board may want to participate in the amendment window. You can find all of the information around what that amendment process looks like, the timeline, it's also on the slide, but you can find all of the information in the General Assembly Handbook on pages 10 through 12. So just wanted to make sure you knew about that. Any General Assembly questions while we're on the topic?
Logan, it's all virtual this time, right?
It is all virtual.
That's kind of sad. I get it, but it's still kind of sad.
So you'll still be sending us out a Zoom link for that General Assembly on the 20th?
There will be, I need to confer with the team as to when like registration opens up, but yes, there will be communications that come out with access to the Zoom, with access to the voting platform. All of those things will happen well in advance of the General Assembly. My advice would be to just block the date on your calendar at this point, and I'll make sure when we come together next month in August that I have a more clear and direct answer to how that happens. But the short answer is yes, you will get all the information you need.